Today I'm taking a look at the smallest and tiniest of mini PCs, which easily fits even into the palm of my hand. I should add that it's the smallest PC I know of. The device goes by the name of XMini and is by the brand AIOEXPC. This miniature PC is equipped with an Intel N100 Quad-Core processor, integrated graphics that can handle several 4K monitors, 16GB of LPDDR5 RAM, and a 512GB M.2 SSD is also part of the whole deal. As far as pricing is concerned, at the time of this video, the XMini can usually be had for about $180 and sometimes even for less with special coupons applied. As always, I'm interested in what one can do with such a thing. I'm talking performance, power consumption, and noise levels, but also temperatures. Surely compromises had to be made in order to squeeze this much hardware into such a small space. Or maybe not. What about the ports and the overall gaming capabilities? Finally, I will of course also cover the topic of security, malware basically, and whether the device being tested today is actually clean and safe to use for users. As far as what comes included, the standard stuff basically. That would be the mini PC itself, a 36-watt power supply that connects via USB-C, an HDMI cable, wall mount bracket and screws, and finally some paper documentation that has somehow left the scene. In terms of aesthetics, I have to give this device a big compliment. I really like the reflective mirrored look along with the subtle play of colors. When powered on, a large illuminated X lights up right away. By tapping the AIOEXPC logo, you can physically switch between a few color and effect presets without any software, although I like the neutral white best. If you prefer no lighting at all, you can simply disable it. The dimensions here are 88 by 88 by 40 mm, so this is seriously small this time around. Nonetheless, they didn't put ancient low-end hardware into this device. The XMini comes equipped with the Intel N100 CPU with 4 cores, 16GB of LPDDR5 RAM, and a 512GB M.2 SSD. However, it must be said that this is not an NVMe drive, but an SSD based on SATA 6GB per second in a small, really compact form factor, as you'll get to see shortly. The SSD manufacturer, however, is totally unknown to me. Although only a single memory module with 16GB and a speed of 4800 MHz is installed, the RAM does actually run in dual channel thanks to LPDDR5. That is one of the cool new features that come along with DDR5. That's something I actually wasn't really aware of for a long time. You never stop learning, I guess. To carry out upgrades or to simply get inside the XMini, you simply pull off those rubber feet on the bottom of the device and then loosen 4 screws. However, there are no additional slots for any expansion, such as M.2 slots. And here you can clearly see that the form factor of the SSD is the type M.2 2242. Seriously tiny. It wouldn't have worked any other way. No edge around the mini PC remains unused, so the power button sitting on one edge. On the other, there are 3 USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports. Around the corner, there's the USB-C input for power, 2 gigabit LAN ports, and 3.5mm audio. Moving on to the next edge, there are 2 HDMI ports and even a DisplayPort video output. So the I/O here is quite impressive and respectable given the price range and size of the device, in my humble opinion. Of course, due to the compactness of the XMini, some things had to be omitted. Sure, if the device were a little bigger, there would have easily been room for 1 or 2 USB 2.0 ports and an SD card reader, but that's not the point of today's mini PC. It's intentionally small. So I can definitely see why not all of it could be implemented, simply due to technical limitations that come with the small dimensions. And I'm not even complaining about having 2 gigabit LAN ports on here. That's pretty sweet actually. This opens up whole new dimensions for use cases such as routers, NAS, and stuff like that. Now, since it's an important detail for me, I'd like to point out to like-minded users that such a device based on the Intel N100 can actually power 4K UHD monitors with up to 60 Hz. I think that's great, considering that not so long ago, you still had to mess around with just 30 Hz. Part of the overall package sure is Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.2. AIOEXPC also equips their XMini with Windows 11 Pro out of the box. When booting up for the very first time, you can choose from several languages to get started with the setup. Out of the box, the Windows 11 version 23H2 is installed. It was activated using a digital license, and after a quick check, it turned out it was an OEM key. Not bad. AIOEXPC also didn't pre-install any bloatware or third-party software on here. That's good and exactly how it should be. Therefore, only the standard stock web browser, Microsoft Edge, comes pre-installed. However, I quickly became suspicious when I saw that an extension was already pre-installed, namely Google Docs Offline. This is when my alarm bells went off. There have been cases in the past of malware being snuck onto the system that way. It was just specified slightly differently, and above all, in a more primitive way as far as the version number was concerned, and so on. So even after a bit of research, it's hard for me to say whether this is a real browser extension or not. Either way, I don't really want anything like that to come pre-installed. It's quite risky, so I'm deducting serious points for that. After such a discovery, naturally I fired up the task manager and looked for questionable processes. I didn't spot anything. The Windows Defender/Security virus scan came back clean. I then went to get some reinforcements and installed Malwarebytes. No threats were detected with it either. Finally, I removed the SSD and ran an external scan with Norton Security Deluxe. Despite my doubts, these individual malware scanners seem to come to the same conclusion that the Windows installation is clean. The UEFI BIOS offers some customization options, but these are generally of no use to the average consumer. So let's take a look at the performance of the XMini. When putting the CPU under seriously heavy full load using Cinebench 2024, the N100 CPU initially goes to show a clock speed of around 2.9 GHz. After some time passes, the clock speed drops down to 2.8 GHz. If you let Cinebench 2024 complete its run, today's device surprisingly even manages to get a small lead over the N97 and N95 devices listed in the charts when it comes to the multi-core test. This is with the N100 processor under this specific AVX load, mind you. The single-core performance is then roughly the same, although you could argue that the N97 and N100 are very close to each other in terms of performance. Generally speaking, they are in the low-end or entry-level segment in terms of overall performance, no doubt about it. Nonetheless, navigating through Windows 11 is mostly smooth and pleasant, which can also be said about basic office work as well as browsing the web. 4K UHD videos and movies play smoothly without any hiccups. I wouldn't have expected anything else, to be honest, as I have already tested quite a few of these mini PCs. That's why I practically have to repeat it over and over again that simple, less intense workloads are usually mastered without any issues by such a budget device. Things take more of a negative turn when you demand more from such a mini PC and want to do more advanced image and video editing, rendering and stuff like that with it. This is where the XMini reaches its limits, and fast. Although with compromises and a whole lot of patience, even that isn't impossible. I therefore do not believe that a combination of CPU and integrated Intel UHD graphics would magically produce any better results in games. And unfortunately, I am so right. Even older AAA games from past years can barely be run at a reduced resolution of 720p and lowest graphics settings. If you're getting to 20 or 30 FPS, depending on a game title, consider yourselves lucky. So you should avoid AAA games like the plague, and if you plan on doing gaming, make sure to fire up titles that are easier to run. The XMini does appear pretty good though when bringing power consumption and noise levels into the picture, but also the temperatures are respectable. When idling, the mini PC barely consumes any power at a measured 11 watts and reaches a mere 33 watts under maximum load when really pushing the device. The noise levels are mostly limited to around 40 decibels, practically inaudible. With lighter loads, one simply can't hear the fan at all. Despite this, the temperatures at a measured 81 degrees Celsius at the very max are still within the healthy, acceptable range, especially when considering how small the device is. Of course, I'm always interested in how the power draw compares to a desktop PC that is already more on the power efficient side. If you wish to run a PC that especially shines in power efficiency, you could consider picking up a Mini PC. The selection and choice of comparable models is huge. Conclusion. That brings me to the point I want to make. I have already tested enough Mini PCs with such a similar hardware configuration that I can tell you in advance what performance it's going to bring to the table, and same for the power draw values. The market is now flooded with similar Mini PCs. However, I'm somewhat defending this AIOEXPC XMini I'm reviewing today because it is a lot more compact and smaller than the countless other Mini PCs on the market. This cute thing weighs in at just 213 grams. Now, if you find the correct use case for such a Mini PC with this hardware configuration, you will end up quite happy. If you demand too much from the device, you will be disappointed. The pre-installed Edge browser extension sure could have been left out, because I generally don't like forced extensions and quickly get uneasy because there could be evil intentions behind them. But the virus scanners all came back with the same result, clean. So technically, the AIOEXPC XMini was able to convince me. And because it is so cute and comes with a wide variety of ports and also has a reasonable price, I can recommend the Mini PC review today to like-minded enthusiasts. Would you pick up yourselves such a cute little miniature PC? If yes, what would you use it for? If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, and if you didn't enjoy it, alternatively, you could make use of that dislike button. With that in mind, thank you all for watching, and until the next one.